if you're the person that has been paying your taxes and you have good credit and income, I've got a product that you can have an effective rate of, 3% or less. Like the one I just closed it this month, their effective rate is in the 2s.
Wow. Welcome to another series in our perfect home buying process discussions. We're going to be actually talking about a big topic, specifically here in Idaho, about folks that own their own business and how do they buy, because I think there's a lot of confusion out there. There's not a lot of information out there, so there can be a lot of missteps. There can be a lot of no steps. So in this process, in this series, what we're talking about is kind of the top things to know, to do or not to do, kind of next steps. And then in this series, we've been putting an offer up at the end of our conversation. So with that, we'll
like something Chase just talked about. People don't realize, but you look at this valley, you look at how it's growing, you look at the businesses that are popping up everywhere. This area has become a huge hub for the entrepreneur-minded businessman.
Yeah,
right. It's happening all over.
Yeah, it's crazy. Idaho's super, super friendly for entrepreneurs, and we've created that base. We've got companies in the town like ClickFunnels that generate and get people excited about small business, and I think a lot of our larger companies like Micron and HP have spawned smaller companies, and now with the great political migration that we have coming, like they're talking about us being one of the new tech spots, right? So. Right. Entrepreneurship is alive in Idaho, and it comes with its own set of problems when you're trying to buy a house.
Yeah, well, just home buying, right? We've been talking about just buying as an employee and kind of the nuances associated to that. And now you step out of that environment, your W-2 environment, and now you're your own business owner. And there's all kinds of things you're encouraged to do as a business owner that could very well shoot yourself in the foot.
Oh, yeah.
Or you think that I can't do because I am a business owner, and we want to dispel, all of those. Well, a large chunk of those today. Let's focus on the top three.
Yeah.
So, with that, what would you say is kind of one of the big ones?
Plan. Like, I think one of the biggest problems that I run into, and I'm going to preface this with the fact that I work with a lot of self-employed borrowers. That's kind of how I cut my teeth in this business, is solving hard problems. In lending, right, and getting people in homes. And so there's never a plan, right? Then the last time we spoke, it was about, starting with the end in mind, right? Put a plan together.
Sooner than later.
Oh, man,
immediately.
Nine
like
times
yesterday.
out of 10, small business owners come to me and like, yeah, we found this house. Here's our taxes. Ah, crap.
Yeah, you just filed them 2 months ago?
Right. Dude. Or I haven't filed them for 2 years, right?
Yeah,
like I see that all the time as well.
Yeah. So I would say, if you're owning your own business and you're going to buy within the next foreseeable future, talk to your lender.
Oh, yeah.
So that you can work your taxes, the things that you need so that you're structuring, setting yourself up for success.
Yeah. Plan. You plan your business every year. You plan your sales. You how many units you want to sell, or how much you want to grow, or you're going to want to buy a building, and so you put all that plan together, right? You do that with a personal side too, right? Yeah. Because what you're doing there affects that. So yeah, number one thing is, it's always going to happen, because again, we passionate people get into passion when they're buying a house and emotion, right? But if you can put a plan together and know, okay, we're going to want to buy within the next 6 to 12 months. Let's sit down and talk to somebody and see what this looks like.
It almost seems interesting to me, and tell me if you see anything different, but the people, the entrepreneurs, the business owners of the world that should plan the most seem almost the most fearful to find out how to plan.
Yeah.
They seem even more hesitant. I'm like, no, you've got to start this. Otherwise, you're just kind of spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting kind of observation on my end.
It is. It's either that or it's that they just assume. I've got all the money I want to buy the cars and the stuff I want. We're good.
No big deal.
Yeah.
We're good.
But I've been writing everything off
right.
because I don't want to pay Uncle Sam anything, and Uncle Sam's like, or the lending world is going, you don't make anything.
Your numbers aren't there, bud.
Right.
Yeah, you got long time before you're going to be ready.
Yeah, and that leads us into number 2, right? Like that was number 2 on my list when it comes to self-employed borrowers or homeowners, is taxes, taxes, taxes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you make a lot of money, you take home a lot of money, but on that paper that you give to the IRS, you've written all this stuff off, and it says that you don't make any money. Well, they've changed things, right? So I have to qualify you, and the government says because you say you don't make any money on your taxes, that also means you don't make any money when it comes to qualifying for a mortgage.
Right. Right.
And so it's an interesting, conundrum that we have to
Kinda
try and
catch
fix.
22,
right?
yeah.
And again, it leads into that planning, and it's why it's the number one thing when it comes to planning.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's business owners that file their taxes in 3-year terms or 5-year terms or 2-year terms, and then, when they do file, it's like, okay, what are my write-offs so I don't get have to pay so much in taxes.
Right.
Because, in their defense, small business owners also tend to have a lot of expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So the more they pay, the more it can hinder their growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's reasons for that. But the accountant and myself have 2 entirely different jobs.
Right.
And that's one of the things that you need to realize.
Please talk to both of us before you do something.
Absolutely. And your accountant's not, I'm not saying he's a bad guy. He's doing right by you, right?
Yeah,
Like, you don't want to, you want to take advantage of the tax laws as they're written as much as you can.
His or her job is to minimize your tax liability.
Absolutely.
You're going, wait a minute, you just maximized all your tax liability, hence how much you make,
Yeah.
hence how much buying power I have for you.
Yeah. You put it all over here, where if you put it here and here, then I can add it back in, right? So that's the biggest thing. Depreciation, mileage, those are the 2 things that they really left us. There's another one, but I see it like once in a while, so not a big deal.
Put
Those are
money
the
in the
2.
right bucket type
Right.
thing.
Right. And so it's a consultation, like you're talking about. You get in touch with me, let me work with your accountant so that we can qualify you while still minimizing as much as we possibly can your tax liability.
This is why the planning is such a big deal. So I was in the finance world for about 3 years.
Yeah.
And got into the banking side for a bit. And that's exactly what we would see.
Yes.
The guy would come in, he would be like, hey, I want to get a loan. I want to, expand the business, maybe add on, what have you. We take the paperwork and it says, well, according to this, you can't afford it.
Yeah.
And that's a very common real deal. I mean,
Of course, they're insulted,
just like you
offended.
said, right? It's everybody's trying to do it. We're trying to be smart with dealing with taxes, but that's where the planning is huge in this.
Absolutely.
Is look ahead, sit down with you, get a plan together, so how this is going to work in your favor.
Yeah.
Because you don't just show up and go, hey, here's my taxes, I want a loan, bam.
Yep.
It doesn't work like that, because this whole time you've been trying to keep money in your pocket.
Yeah. To kind of give you an example, one of my favorite clients, a gentleman that I helped 2 years ago, owns a financial planning company, right?
Here it comes.
Investments and life insurance and all that stuff. And yep, this is how much we make. And so he's got it, and he's got it structured the way he should. He's got like a parent company, a couple of small companies behind it, and here's our taxes, right? Well, he's the sole owner, and he makes good money. And we're digging through and finding stuff out, and boom, boom, he's the sole owner of the parent company. He's showing $1 million loss. It's like,
You want to buy a house when you lost $1 million?
okay, we're gonna have to go a different way. Right?
Was it $1 billion with a B?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. We're gonna buy a house.
No, not $1 billion loss. It was $1 million loss.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Gotcha.
But it was it's a $1 billion company, right?
That's,
So
that's what. Yeah.
yeah, and so you're talking about $1 million loss, and so now we don't have any income, right? Because you got to offset
All of a
that.
sudden, breaks,
Yeah. So
back up a little bit.
right, and so to your point, like you have to plan.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get in touch with me. It's not the Wild West anymore. There's requirements and guidelines that we have to follow, and in order to do that, especially if you're self-employed, let's talk first. Let's get you moving. I see it all the time. Some good friends, same thing.
So timeline. What's a really not realistic but a wise amount of time that you should be planning, so when you go in to make the move to buy a house, you got enough behind you?
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? Because it depends on the business and the business owner,
right.
right? So if you've been in business for 5 years, I only need 1 year tax returns for just a general guideline. There's loopholes and different things, right? But so before you file your next taxes, if you want to buy, talk to a lender, right? So if you're under 5 years, it's a 2-year average typically, and so what does last year's look like? What does this year's have to overcome? That's the scary thing, right? If you got somebody that's making a couple $100,000 and taking it home, but their taxes say you're averaging about $400 a month, that's, and you have to average that with 2 years. Most of the time, there's nothing we can do with the second year in order to get that average up high enough to buy.
Yeah.
So it can be longer depending on how long you've been in business, but definitely before you file this year, if you're planning on purchasing this year, talk to a lender.
Now there are some things, and this is out of our depth, so talk to your accountant. But there are some things you can kind of do to unwind a little bit, from what I understand.
Yeah, Fannie Mae has kind of put the kibosh on that as well,
which makes sense,
yeah,
right? Because
they
like, wait a
have.
minute, you told us this, and now you're telling us
Right.
that.
Yeah, you used to be able to amend taxes pretty easy and go back and and move things around. You can still amend, but there has to be a good legal reason, that you do that.
Because they're going to ask you.
They are.
They will call your accountant and say, "Why did they amend this?" And your accountant ain't lying for you.
Yeah, you have to submit a letter, and they have to sign it, and now their license is on the line.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So to your point, it's even more important now.
Yes. Yeah. Before. Yeah, and you just understand that you're going to pay more taxes in the year that you buy a house.
Right.
Typically.
Because you're claiming more income.
Yeah.
It's by design, and then you can figure out what you want to do subsequent years. But
I literally just closed one on the 3rd, and it was self-employed borrower. One was self-employed. The spouse was W-2'd. The majority of the income was self-employed. They were paying a lot in taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was like the easiest transaction I've ever had. Right? Like it just, they were
making the income that could afford the house.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is that philosophy, right? Like if you're paying a lot of taxes, you're making a lot of money, right? Some people have that philosophy, but they're few and far between. And I'd venture to say I'm probably not that person either, so I understand.
Yeah, it is interesting that the more money you make, the more resources you typically have to claim less income. But then when you want to do things like buy a house, then you're kind of in that catch-22 that you were talking about.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about like two things, as I recall. Is there maybe another third one that you'd really want to, plant the
taxes are the biggest thing, but also understand if you filed your taxes and you're not making anything, there's still answers, right? And I do this. I'm in the non-QM world a lot because of the reputation I built as a problem solver. There's things called bank statement loans. If you're buying an investment property, there's a debt service coverage ratio loan. There's other ways, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of ways to skin a cat.
Yeah,
there just really is. So
yeah, and the more you plan, the less you're going to have to engage in kind of the out of boundary, the non-conventional loan stuff that becomes very painful, becomes very expensive, things like that. So to your point, there's yet another reason to start with the process, to plan, to get with a good team, to start talking about this, because if you absolutely decide you want to buy a house and you haven't prepped at all, can probably find you a loan product, but it's going to be painful and it's going to be expensive.
Yeah, and I've gotten to the point where I can get through them pretty easily. I can minimize the pain. I'm not saying it won't be painful. The lending process is difficult, right? That we have a lot of guidelines over top of us now that we really have to watch out for. But it will be more expensive, right? But again, going back to where we stand in our market, if you have the opportunity to buy, that's why you put a good team together, because I could promise you. And you can go back to and talk to any one of my clients that we've used these products with. I sit down and have the conversation with them. This is not a permanent solution. We can get you into your house because the house is available. You're going to pay more up front. But then we're going to plan for the next year or 2 years, whatever it takes to get you out of this product.
Yeah.
This is not a long-term solution, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing. Like even no matter what price point you're in, it's better to buy right now than it's been in 3 years.
Yeah. Interesting.
For sure.
Yeah, well, I would say those are big things to consider. I think that the takeaway is as most always, give us a call, start the conversation, talk through the process. In our perfect home buying process, it's typically one or two things, either a workshop where we kind of talk through this in a little more detail and cover a little bit more information, educate a little bit more. In this specific case, when you're talking about business owners, I think it's pretty clear we're going to go right to the consultation. This is very specific. This is very personal. This is a conversation where we need to sit down and talk about very specific things and map it out for you. So, reach out to us, give us a call, email us.
Can I drop, we'll say one thing real quick before we wrap up here, Jerod. I don't want it to seem like it's all doom and gloom around the small business owners, right? Because that's where I cut my teeth. My parents are small business owners. If you're the person that has been paying your taxes and you have good credit and income, I've got a product that you can have an effective rate of 3% or less. The one I just closed this month, their
Oh, wow.
their
That low?
effective rate is in the 2s.
Wow.
So there's positives for those folks too.
Yes.
And I don't want it to make it seem all doom and gloom.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
But because,
You
those
can
are my
develop
people.
those people into those folks that
Absolutely.
qualify for
Yeah.
that inexpensive, cheaper loan
Yes.
over time. Like you said, kind of restructure. Yeah, we didn't plan out in advance enough, but now we're going to give it some time, structure it such that you are, qualified for that and put you into the
Yeah,
best
I mean,
product.
the first thing is go sit down with you.
Yep.
Get educated, understand your options, then get a plan, and then you're off to the races. Now you're heading somewhere.
Yeah. No matter whether it's first time or entrepreneurs or bought a bunch of times, a plan. You got to start. You got to get started. You got to sit down with somebody who knows what they're doing.
You can row a boat a long ways, but if you're going in circles, you're not getting anywhere.
You got that one that one oar going and your buddy's not helping.
You can act like you're, but again, understanding the way you're putting energy and understanding how you're navigating and having the map to get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool. Well, so next steps, definitely give us a call. In this series, Perfect Home Buying Process, we've been offering that we're going to cover up to $500 for a home inspection. We feel very strongly that whether you're buying an existing home or even a new construction home, that having that peace of mind around what's the condition, what's the issues surrounding that property. So we want to cover that for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll give that to you during your consultation.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
And again, like if those leads come to you, I'm gonna cover the appraisal, right? If this podcast is driving leads and they're coming to you from this, then we want to help out as well.
You're gonna cover their appraisal. That's another. What we'll cover at $600 for
$600
the appraisal. So
Yeah.
that's just going to minimize your costs even.
That is outstanding, Chase.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
We appreciate that. So.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. We appreciate you listening to yet another episode in the series, and we look forward to chatting with you and seeing what we can do to help.
Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out, give us a call, and we'd love to meet you.
Absolutely. So with that, I'll wish you a blessed day.
Hey, wherever you're at, make the most of it and be in the moment.